It is Friday, 9 o'clock hour. We've been doing this now for the last few months. It has become a fun way to wrap up the week on KCMO 95.7, our Feature Friday segment. Bring somebody in from town who's interesting, different, news, sports, politics, doesn't much matter. We do it all. This morning, we're doing weather with our new chief meteorologist at KCTV5, Luke Dorris. Luke, good morning, man. How are you?
Hey, Pete. I'm great. Thanks for having me here, my man.
Hey, you have been here now for 2 months. You came from Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me the story. You land here in Kansas City when it's, what, minus 10 degrees?
Yeah, so the day that I left Miami, it was 82, and we were lugging all of our luggage. You know, we have a family of 5. So I am pouring sweat going into the airport the day that I'm flying here, and then we land, and it's the 27 degree below zero wind chill night that we got here. And then I have to put all the car seats into the car, which, you know, that takes a minute.
I've done,
So I'm out in the thick of Kansas City cold, one of the worst snaps that we've had since the 70s, and that was my greeting as soon as I get here.
That was your greeting. All right, so you are, I mean, you came from Miami, but for people that don't know, you're a Midwest guy by trade, grew up in St. Louis, wife's from Lincoln. Mm-hmm. So this is more or less, I don't want to say it's home, but it's regionally home for you. How's that been?
Oh, it's amazing. So being in South Florida, if anybody has had children and you've been away from family, you know, grandparents and all that stuff, it's such a challenge. So we've got 3. I've got identical twin girls that are a year and a half, and I've got a 4-year-old boy. And family visits were pretty rare because it's tough. You know, you never want to fly again after you go on.
We do it a lot, and it's hard.
Oh, it's a challenge.
It's hard.
So yes, we wanted to be here close to family. We're right in the middle between my wife's family and my family, but a stronger connection even to Kansas City, because we pass through here all the time, is while I was in Lincoln. I worked in Lincoln, Nebraska for 7 years, and my wife got a job. She wasn't we were dating at the time, but she got a job in Crown Center over at Fleischmann-Hillard. So she moved to Kansas City, and then I'm doing the drive every weekend from Lincoln to here, and we both just fell in love with Kansas City. And I've been wanting to get here a long time, not just recently, but since I was in Lincoln years ago. And then we had that little pit stop in Miami, and so grateful to finally be here. I love this city. I love it. It's amazing.
It is. As a transplant myself now, going on starting year 7, it is just amazing. So you talk about your stay in Miami. We were talking about this, and listen, a lot of us think of Florida and think about the beaches and how great it is and the sunshine, but especially South Florida is a tough place to raise a family.
Yeah, it is. You know, one, I'm not from there. We don't have a lot of support. That was a big challenge. But the other part is, you know, we just have this Midwest, security here. And in South Florida, it's just a major global sprawling metroplex. And it's difficult to get away from crime and from troubled spots. And there are nice areas. I don't mean to make it sound like there aren't. South Florida is a wonderful, beautiful place. But when you come here, you just see the difference and the school systems, and it's just a very secure and wonderful place to raise a family.
You know, what I would add to that, too, is, and you tell me, I've only visited there, but there's much more, you feel like you're part of a community here in a way you may not in South Florida?
Oh, 1,000%. I had 2 houses while I was there, not at the same time. I lived in one place, I moved to another. And you don't know your neighbors. It's difficult.
Yeah.
And people come. The thing about South Florida that was difficult for me personally, some people love this, but it's just go, 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 go. I mean, it is all about getting to the top. And
all those damn New Yorkers ruining it down there, you know?
Busy people, man.
Yeah.
So what they do is they come home from work and they shoot straight into there are tons of friendly people there too. But they go into their house and that's where they stay, and then they get up in the morning and they're gone. So the community, I never really got a sense of that in both places that I lived. So that was tough too. And then we get here and the Midwest, nice, you know.
Yeah.
I was pulling up to the into the studio today here this morning, and people are just waving, and that's what I grew up with. You know, that's how it was in St. Louis, where you'd pass people in your neighborhood anyway, and they'd shoot up the 2 fingers and wave at you. And I missed it so much, and it's great to see that again. And yeah, we've already got. I know my neighbors, and we've helped each other out, and it's wonderful.
That's great. Luke Dorris is joining us. He's the new chief meteorologist at KCTV5. So, you know, we were talking about this off the air. These jobs do not come up much, if at all. Chief jobs in great markets like Kansas City. You were able to get it. You were able to jump on it. What do you attribute that to?
Well, we had an amazing stroke of luck where, like you were saying, people don't leave here. That's why. It's a great place. Once you get here, and that's something else that's interesting. When I was in Miami and I was telling people, I'm leaving, I'm going to Kansas City, they'd say, Kansas City? Mm-hmm. What, I don't know if they got images of tumbleweeds in their heads or what, but it was so foreign to them.
And they're thinking smaller market, all that stuff, right?
I'm like, well, they've got roads and the internet and fine restaurants and all kinds of wonderful things. Don't come. Stay away. But it's such a great place, and it's a great place for weather, too. This is truly a wonder of the world. The Great Plains and the Midwest is a unique spot in the world where very other few places are similar in the extremes that we get. Bangladesh is actually another one. And it's because we have the mountains to the west, we have the cold air to the north in Canada, and we've got the moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. All that converges in our general area. So for a meteorologist, this is just the spot. But yeah, people don't leave here. So we had, Gary Amble, Gary Lezak, Brian Busby still here, and they stay for decades. And for something to come open like this was an incredible opportunity. So I had to jump on it.
Well, take me through that. So, it's not just about chasing bigger markets. It is much more fun being a meteorologist in Oklahoma City, in Kansas City, in Omaha, in Dallas, than it is in Miami, where it's 85 and sunny most days, and you get maybe 1 or 2 hurricanes a year.
Yeah, that's it. It's it's hot, sunny. It'll be like that for the next week. Back to you guys. Yeah. And that's a challenge. The fun. Yeah, it's interesting. I would say it's more interesting than it is necessarily fun, because there are times where, especially snow, if you whiff a snow forecast, you want to crawl into a cave and hide for a week, and you can't. You have to go face the music the next day and explain what went wrong. But in South Florida, the thing was hurricanes. That was the purpose of the job, and it is an incredibly challenging thing to communicate a hurricane threat. So there was a lot of purpose in that. But when there wasn't a hurricane threat or a flood threat, which is another thing that we had, there wasn't a whole lot to sink your teeth into. Yeah. And in the Midwest, there's always a story to tell. There's always a change. There's something compelling to tell to the viewer. And we get that all the time. I mean, we're going to see it later today as a cold front comes through, and the evening's going to be chilled.
And the hurricane season really is what, 2.5, 3 months maybe? If that?
Well, it starts in June. Sometimes you get these little
early is that starts. Early? Okay.
Yeah, it starts in June and it goes through the end of November, so it lasts quite a while. But really, real hurricane season, where you've got to worry about them, rather than just, we could see a tropical storm, which is no big deal. The tropical storm's not a big event, is really the end of July and through mid-October is where it rocks in.
Okay, all right. We are in the studios here with Luke Dorris, the new chief meteorologist at KCTV5. We were also just talking about this. He went to OU, which I got to imagine that's like the Harvard for guys who want to study meteorology.
It is the spot for severe weather. So for severe weather, studying severe weather. Yeah. Every tornado and severe thunderstorm watch is issued from a place called the Storm Prediction Center, which it was in the building where I had my classes.
That's awesome.
So I would walk past this, everybody knows in meteorology, the Storm Prediction Center. They're in there, monitoring storms and issuing watches as I'm tooling off to go do my classes for the day.
Wow.
It's an incredible place for that.
That is awesome. So, of course, many of these listeners will know I was in Oklahoma in Woodward up by the Panhandle for a couple of years, starting my radio career. You're in Norman. And the legend down there when it comes to meteorology is a guy named Gary England. Mm-hmm. You interned under Gary England, right?
I did. So initially, I didn't want to be in TV. I wanted to forecast for the National Weather Service. And while I was in college, there was an internship that was highly competitive to go intern for the National Weather Service, and I didn't get it. So the backup was they had one for TV. It was at Channel 9, KCTV in Oklahoma City, and I thought, well, I'll give that a shot, and I got that one. But I still wasn't planning on being on television because I didn't think that meteorologists on TV, I thought that they were journalists that were presenting the weather. I didn't understand that you have to know your chops if you're going to be on TV in a major market like Oklahoma City. And I learned that very quickly as they're, chasing tornadoes and helicopters, and they're having to explain what the threats are with, severe weather is a major problem in Oklahoma.
Worse there than here. Oh, I mean, it's bad here, right? But it's worse there.
They get more. Our storms can be as extreme. Our tornadoes can be as strong. Look at Joplin in 2011. But they do get hit more with greater impacts in Oklahoma. Look at Moore. Moore, Oklahoma has been smashed by F5s multiple times. They had the most recent F5 in 2013. They had the El Reno tornadoes, the widest tornado on record. It was over 2 miles wide. So it's a major issue there. And I learned very quickly that they are incredible meteorologists. And then I fell in love with the other side of it, which is telling it. Not just forecasting it, but then having to communicate it, which is, predicting the weather is pretty tough.
Yeah.
Telling it well is probably harder.
Telling the story well, like you say, kind of condensing it to layman's terms and predicting the people what they need to know is looks easier than it really is.
People should walk away from a forecast and know how to feel. How should you feel about this? Is this alarming? Are we raising the alarm? Is this disruptive? It might mess with your plans. And to try to figure out all the little nuances of tone and the correct words, and then you've got to have the correct visuals to go with it. It's tough.
What about you? When were you at OU? What years?
I got there in 2007. I graduated in 2010.
2000. So you didn't get either of those more tornadoes. It was 99, 03, and 13.
Correct.
So you weren't there for any of the big ones necessarily.
Right. Yeah. We had several tornadoes while I was there. And what's interesting, too, is every place I've ever lived has had folklore as to why they don't get hit by tornadoes. Here, there's the DeSoto split, I'm learning, and there's multiple spots where people say they go around. And in St. Louis, we have the river. We have the Mississippi River, and we have bluffs. Tornadoes have gone up and down mountains. They've been up to 11,000 feet high. They don't care about your little bluff. And then in Norman, it was the Norman bubble, which was some made-up thing. And then while I was there, Norman gets hit by an F3 tornado.
Well, so that's great because it reminds me when I was in Woodward, they had one really bad tornado back in the 1950s. And the urban legend was that I guess it would have been the Native Americans liked that area in Oklahoma because it was kind of in a valley in northwest Oklahoma. And they couldn't get hit. It would always go around, 1 in a million years. And then I'm there in 2012, and an EF3 came through and it killed half a dozen people. It was a midnight tornado in April of 2012.
Yeah.
And, they haven't had one since. But, of course, I show up for 2 years. My wife comes out from New York. I tell her, hey, Twister's just a movie. That's not real life. And within 4 months, we get hit with the one literally a quarter mile north of our apartment.
Oh, no, it's terrifying.
It's crazy. It was just crazy. What about you? Any personal tornado experiences, either on the air, chasing, anything like that?
On the air, yeah, multiple times, especially, in Nebraska. I covered tornadoes in Florida, but they're small, they're weak. One of them went right through a densely populated part of Fort Lauderdale called Las Olas, and that's where they have all the fancy shops. And this thing was knocking over power lines, and it was caught on. Everybody had it on cell phone from their high rises. But the thing is, they're so fast. By the time a radar scan takes 5 minutes, this tornado was so brief that by the time it touched down and then lifted, it never showed up on radar. It was gone by the time that we could see it on radar. So there was a tornado warning for all of about 5 minutes, but it did drop and cause some damage. It was a small one. And then in Nebraska, we had multiple outbreaks, covered a lot of tornadoes there. Personally, I've chased tornadoes a lot while I was in college. Now, if there's severe weather on TV.
The studio, yeah.
But in Oklahoma, we chased quite a lot. And I saw what was the Red Rock tornado, which was an EF2. That was in 2010. But my personal story is I thought I got hit by a tornado. I later found out I did not. And that's why I got into meteorology. I'm a gearhead. I love cars.
Yeah.
And I was in college in Illinois to become an automotive engineer. And while I was in college, I had a part-time job when I wasn't in school at a beer warehouse, a beer distributor. So I was, 18, 19 years old working at a beer distributor. My friends loved me.
Yeah, I was going to say, they were your best friend. Yeah, they became real good.
So anyway, I was in my building, big aluminum-sided warehouse, and a storm blew in, and I'm always been interested in weather, so I stopped working, and I'm watching the storm come in. And then I heard, if you've seen the movie Titanic, the best way I could describe it is when the ship is halfway out of water, and you can hear the metal strain and moan as a weird sound.
Yes.
And then the ship breaks. That's what this building did. You heard the metal twist and moan and be under stress, and then it lasted for probably 2 seconds. But I'm looking around thinking, what is going on? Bam! Half the building went down while I was in it, and I thought I was getting hit by a tornado. And I later learned it was not a tornado. It's what we call a microburst. It was 90-mile-per-hour straight-line winds, but it blew that baby down, and not the half I was in, but the other half I watched it fold. And I thought, well, that's enough for me. And no more cars. I have to know how this works. And I went off to Oklahoma.
And that's what made you go to OU.
That's what got me.
Wow. That's great. So now, having the chief job here, watching KCTV5, you know as well as anyone that any market, when it comes to weather, people want that familiar face, that trusted face. How do you make up ground in this market against guys that have been here for a while? What's the goal for you?
Well, I have tremendous respect for all the meteorologists here. I mean, one, they're very talented, they're very intelligent, and they've been here a long time, and I haven't. And that's not to be taken lightly. So it takes time, and I'll have to earn respect, and I'll have to do a good job. And if I don't, then I won't get it. So for me, it's just going to be every day I'm going to go in, give it my best, and I try to present the weather in a way where, so much of what I see on TV is this is what happens, and they'll show a forecast radar, for example, and then those things bounce around all the time. The weather changes all the time. What I like to do is say, here's the range, kind of like a hurricane forecast cone. If we're looking at a snow event that's coming our way, show the range of possibilities so that people know what to prepare for. Then if the snow, if it adjusts track, which it will, that's going to happen, then it's not a wrong forecast. This was within this range. Maybe the storm's going further south, and we're going to get less because it's going in this track, so we're looking at the lower end, rather than just, in 3 days it's going to snow 5 inches. And then you come in the next day and say, it's not going to be anything. And then come in the next day and say, it's back on track. Be consistent with the message, refine the forecast over time, and say, here are the boundaries with this system, and present it that way.
Do you feel like we're, in your lifetime, ever going to be in a place where we can better predict tornadoes in particular?
Yes. In fact, we have something now. It's a really high resolution computer forecast simulation. So what we call a weather model. And it is at times able to predict supercells. Supercells spawn tornadoes. It's not predicting tornadoes, but it's predicting the rotation within the storm, which is a precursor.
And the direct line of the supercell?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
It does it doesn't always nail it, but it does at times do really, really good. So we're not there yet. There will be a day where we get really close in short term, 24, maybe 48 hours, saying, we're probably going to see it at this time in this general area. Beyond that, there's something called chaos theory, which is part of meteorology, and that is the atmosphere is infinitely chaotic. You would have to sample and measure every single particle of air in the atmosphere to have a 100% accurate forecast. We will never have that ability. So there's always going to be chaos, and the further out that you go, you get into day 5, day 7, I don't think that those will ever be nailed 100%. Day 10, they'll get better, but there is a limit.
Luke Dorris, chief meteorologist at KCTV5, been in town for a couple of months. Great guy. My first time meeting him. So glad you came in. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Pete.
This is great. Watch him every night. New chief meteorologist at KCTV5.